Yep, just took a little tapping to tap that out. Now here's the timing gear for this, and it has the dreaded little Teflon discs on here, which is a good thing, so those aren't missing. So this Saito 45S, one of the things that makes this a 45S is this timing gear, because it has different lobe shape over just standard Saito 45s. From what I've read, this is a more aggressive, maybe a more pointed, I'm not sure what they did to it. It's hard to find any real information on it, but from what I've read, it's got the timing gear of a 50 or a 56 on there. They use the same one on the 56, which is one of the reasons that that engine is a little bit more powerful. But this is like the timing gear for a 50 or a 56. I'm not sure if they're interchangeable, but and on a 45 size, that's what gave it a little bit of a power increase. But as you can see, this thing is pretty nasty. I'm gonna to the point now where I'm probably gonna have to just on these tablets. Followers can come through this way, but I'm not going to be able to get away from taking this rubber stuff off, and it's just peeling off right now. Unfortunately, that's destroyed, so there's another expense I'm going to have to put towards this rebuild project, is get some new boots. Not like they're a lot, but if I'd actually waited and ordered parts after I had this engine and disassembled it instead of just going ahead and ordering a couple of things individually, I would have saved some money in shipping, but such is life. You live and you learn. So I'm basically just going to be putting all these parts in my tray here, and I want to pull this push rods out. These push rods, Saito push rods, are not symmetrical. They don't have an intake and exhaust, but they do have a tapered end. One end is tapered. Those are the ends that actually engage in the rocker arms. So even though there's not a right or a left, there is an orientation with these. Let's see what the rubber here is like. Hopefully I don't need to replace these rubber pieces, but you never know. Those actually feel like they're still somewhat pliable, so I think they'll be okay. Just put these back on the tubes. And again, gasket. I've got more of these. I usually don't even replace the gaskets on here because so little oil gets up in there that it's really kind of pointless. But let's pull this thing out here. Put my magnifier down so I can take a quick look at this connecting rod. Doesn't look like it's too worn. Still has a good fit there, so the connecting rod won't need to be replaced, which is a good thing. Now this is all going to have to be soaked because that doesn't have a whole lot of free movement there. Now as I'm pulling this out, I see that there's a dot. There's a dimple on this. That will indicate that that's the front of the connecting rod. So I'm just going to have to make note of that as I pull this out. I can hear it sucking. Wow. Wow. Well, that is a engine with some serious runtime on it. Got the top of that piston. That's been a long time since I seen piston that's that carboned up. I don't know if you're going to be able to look in here with this or not, but it's pretty dark in there too. So we got some work to do here. Clearly this is an engine that's been run a bit, and it feels like, well, the ring is pretty compressed on this one side. It wanted to come out on this side. Let's see if I can just go ahead and take this ring off. Now I've got a replacement ring. Pick here, a T-pin here. I can try and coax this side out. Okay. Alright, so just kind of walk that ring right off of here. Okay, ring's off. There's a lot of debris or a lot of gunk in that ring groove, so we're going to have to clean all that out. Looks like these little discs are here. This ring is quite heavily carboned up. I want to try and get these little Teflon discs out of here. It'll facilitate me being able to get, and the thing that's weird is that these things normally just fly right out. They don't usually get recessed or have any difficulty in coming out. They usually come out and then you end up losing them because they come out so freely, but in this instance they're really in there. They're just little Teflon guides that keep the wrist pin, piston pin from scoring up the side of the cylinder. These can be cleaned up and reused. So any piece I can reuse and keep this thing as original as possible, the better. So I'm going to just start soaking a lot of these parts now, and probably go get a little bin of acetone and start with some acetone. I've completed tearing down the engine and done a lot of the cleanup. Actually, most of the parts are clean now, so I just kind of want to go over what I've done here and how things look now. Here's the crankcase. As you saw before in one of the earlier videos, it was pretty rough looking. It's all cleaned up now. Bearings are out. Crankshaft is out. It's pretty much ready to be reassembled. All I need is I need to get the bearings in the mail, which will probably be here Monday, hopefully. Here's the head. It was pretty rough looking too all the way around here. It was just coated with a bunch of stuff, and I kind of mentioned that I was going to be soaking it in a number of different things, but what I ended up using was I had a little container of kerosene, and then I also had a container of this LA's Totally Awesome cleaner. Believe it or not, I put some stuff in the kerosene that didn't really seem to do anything other than make me stink. The LA's Totally Awesome cleaner actually was what I used on just about everything that actually got all of this stuff clean, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to shine a light down in here, but the inside of the cylinder was pretty dirty, and it's incredibly clean now. I just used some LA's Totally Awesome cleaner and some Q-tips, just kind of let it sit in there, and then I just kind of went to town on it. The rocker arms here all cleaned up. Now I was having difficulty getting this pin out of the exhaust one. I actually never did get that thing out, so I didn't drop the valves at all. I was going to, but since I couldn't do both valves, I decided not to do either of the valves. So and honestly, the valves look fine in there now that I've cleaned up the inside of this. So this head is pretty much ready to accept the piston. And if you recall, the piston was looking pretty rough when I first pulled it out, and here's what it looks like now. I got 98% of the carbon off the top. I didn't feel like continuing to scrub on that. I figured it's clean enough. I got that ring groove nice and clean. In fact, the ring that was on here, it actually broke as I was trying to clean it, so it's no big deal. I've got another one. But I used the broken pieces of that thing, and again, just soaked in LA's Totally Awesome cleaner. I just dropped it in there, and then I just kept running that thing through there, and you can see this ring groove is quite clean, cleaned up inside here. I mean, all of these parts look basically brand new. The wrist pin, I used a little bit of this 1500 emery cloth, and I just kind of cleaned things up like that with this pin, and then also the pin on the timing shaft too, and just wiped it down, and I'll lube it up. So the piston's ready to go back together. I've got a ring for it here. Got a replacement ring, so I'll be putting that on. Crankshaft, as you can see now, I didn't take any pictures of it, unfortunately, when it came out, but it was black. I mean, it was nasty. This thing you know, pretty much looks brand new now. When I tapped it out, the rear bearing came with it. I didn't bother to clean these bearings up because they're going to be replaced anyway, but these are the bearings that were in there. So they're going to get replaced. The pinion pin, or the pinion gear, always is kind of a tricky thing to get off, but you know, obviously that bearing isn't going to come off until this comes off, so you kind of use the bearing to pull this thing off, and that came off fine. And then of course there was also, I thought there was another metal piece that went over that. Not finding it in my bin of parts here right now. I need to find that. There's another metal collar that goes over the crankshaft. So those items are cleaned up. Oh, here it is. So it'll go bearing, pinion, and this collar or spacer basically goes on there also. So that's, you know, nearly ready. Of course I need the bearings, so I can lube that stuff up. Back cover, you did see that. I had that displayed. It was pretty nasty. Now it's all nice and clean. Timing cover and gear, all lubed up, cleaned up. Basically looks brand new. What I'm going to do here, I think I'm going to give this a shot, is I'm going to use heat shrink tubing. So I'm going to put, once I put this thing together, I'm going to put it together with the heat shrink tubing in lieu of the rubber bushings. And then I'm just going to, as the push rods are in there, I'm just going to heat shrink this down and suck it in there, and that actually will probably serve as a better seal than those rubber bushings anyway, and then it's just as easily removed and replaced too if need be, instead of me going and buying some of those rubber seals. It doesn't look like I've got a gasket on hand for the rear cover. I'm not really too concerned about that. I've never seen these things leak. Carburetor is the last thing I'll show you here as far as the cleaned up parts go. I basically took this completely apart. It was all gummed up. Now it moves nice and smooth. Intake manifold's all cleaned up. And I've got a brand new gasket and then the little metal washer, even though the metal washer on this one was still fine. So I'll probably just use that. I did not replace the O-ring in here, because to me it still feels like I've got plenty of friction fit there, and I blew in here and I can seal it pretty well, so that's pretty much ready to go. Unfortunately, because of the fact that I don't have bearings, there's really not a whole lot else I can do here as far as, I mean, I can put my piston connecting rod together and insert that into the head, but unfortunately that's about as far as I can really go without having bearings installed. So that's about where we are right now with the parts of this Saito FA-45 special rebuild.